All good stories need conflict, and the conflict here is needing a change. For months, I have poured all of my energy into building my world. Now don't get me wrong, it's one of my favorite parts of the game, but it was also exhausting. Gathering resources, figuring out designs, it's a lot of work. I knew I needed a break to shake things up a bit, and that's when I decided it's time for an adventure. This is the perfect time now that I've got my wings. In fact, you know what? This isn't just a mega adventure. This is going to be you and me going out to conquer the Overworld. Every battle, treasure, and adventure that we can think of is exactly what we're going to do today. We will both face our fears and gather as much loot as we possibly can along the way. And so begins our first quest, as I very quickly head over to grab a few mending books from our friendly neighborhood villager. Thank you, sir. With the adventures we have planned, we are going to need to get a lot of mileage out of these wings and all of our gear as well. As I went back to enchant my gear, I was hit with a harsh reality. It's very likely that I will die at least once in this conquest, and if I die and lose my only pair of wings, well, it would be a monumental task to travel the end to find another pair without the ability to fly. It was then that I realized that although my intentions are to conquer the Overworld, the adventure is going to have to begin with the end. So I took to the skies, scanning the horizon for any signs pointing to the stronghold. And living up to my ditzy reputation, I realized that while I knew the general direction, I didn't exactly remember how to get to the stronghold itself. But I pressed on, searching for any treasures along the way. Apparently I already found this treasure? But why did I drop the treasure map though? Well, I'm going to grab it and we're going to check it out later to see if there is still, in fact, a treasure to be found. I don't know why I would have left the map laying there. A familiar sight is the sandstone that looks like an elephant, so I know the portal's nearby. And finally, I was able to find the rather underwhelming entrance. We definitely need to fix that one day. Once I stood in front of the portal, I knew this was it. There was no turning back now, so I took a deep breath and took that leap of faith. I emerged into the eerie alien world knowing it held the treasures I sought. Those extra wings would grant me the peace of mind to explore the world like never before. After white-knuckling it over the void for a while, I finally began to find the end ships, each one containing many treasures to behold. Dang, these chests have some good loot. But the best treasure, without a doubt, were the wings. I focused only on the ships leaving the cities for another time. For today, this adventure was all about the wings, and I would stop at nothing to claim them as my own. Now that I've returned from my wing gathering and get to enjoy the benefit of the mending enchantment, I realize that I don't actually have a good XP farm set up yet. But doing villager trades seemed to do the job just fine, and as an added bonus, I get all those extra emeralds to collect to go along with it. Good as new. With wings to spare, I was curious about that treasure map, so with reckless abandon, I flew out to find the X that marked the spot. And in that spot, I found some amazing treasure. That was definitely worth the gamble. So we're going to add that treasure to our collection, and at the end of this, we're going to see how much we've collected along the way. So far, we've had it a bit easy, but now I think we need to begin our rite of passage with the more challenging tasks that lie ahead. I knew an ocean monument was high upon the list, and while considering what direction to head out, I realized that I had the answer literally right in front of me. All I needed was a cartographer, and I could get a map to the exact location. I could practically sense his excitement as he handed me the map. I figured it would be a good idea to have some water-breathing potions, but I need a pufferfish. So I grabbed my pole and cast my line in hopes of catching one. It actually took no time at all. I gathered all the supplies that I would need in order to brew that special water-breathing Kool-Aid. I'm not the best brewmaster, but I'm pretty sure I remember how to make this variety. Once that was all done, it was finally time to head out for a meet and greet with the Elder Guardians. That map actually proved to be extremely useful, and the ocean monument was actually relatively close to home. I prepared for the worst and set my spawn, and then I braved the cold waters and made my way towards the ocean monument. Now just one quick little pit stop first that I cannot resist. Nothing life-changing in here, but I always enjoy taking a peek. With the ocean monument looming ahead, I formulate my plan. I need to strike fast and get those first blocks broken before I get hit with mining fatigue. I break through quickly and enter the ocean monument with confidence, knowing from past experience that it was not that difficult to conquer. I make quick work of the first Elder Guardian and then make my way to the next. This time around, however, I had a couple of close calls that shook me up a little. I had to go into defensive mode to avoid getting hurt any further. Yes, we are calling it defensive mode. Hey, whatever works, right? Well, in any event, I managed to make my way through all 3 Elder Guardians, and once the mining fatigue had finally worn off, I got what I considered to be the real treasure out here, the sponges. Oh, and the sea lanterns. I love sea lanterns. I'm a real sucker for good lighting. All right, that gold wasn't half bad either. Once I get a conduit made, I'll head back out here and work on gathering more blocks, and most likely we'll end up draining it just for the fun of it. Ouch. I returned to grab a map to the Woodland Mansion. Okay, seriously, like, this guy totally deserves Employee of the Month for having these kinds of sales numbers. Great job, dude. As I embarked once again towards our next adventure, I felt a surge of excitement coursing through my veins. To me, these are some of the best moments in the game. Those moments where great risk meets great reward. Since the Woodland Mansions are some of the more rare structures in the game, I knew it would likely be a long journey. But I was happy to explore the new terrain and discover the hidden treasures along the way. That is, after all, part of what this entire adventure is all about. Can we please just take a moment to recognize the fact that I did actually manage to land on top of this without harm? Thank you. Usually the golden apples are the only things worth hoping for in these chests. The treasures so far have been very good to me. But then I got an entirely new kind of treasure. The finding of my very first outpost. I'm actually surprised I haven't seen one up till now. My treasure hopes with the outpost would be to find a goat horn or some allays. My hopes for both were quickly dashed. These poor guys really don't have it too good out here, do they? If this is what they consider treasure, then... Ew. I figured before leaving this area, I might as well clean up the mess and, frankly, put these guys out of their misery for living such sad little lives with such sad little treasures. My plan was to grab every bit of treasure I could find between here and the mansion, and before I could even find the next treasure, I found the next outpost. Well, at least these guys had an enchanted book. For their troubles, I let them live. From there, I carried on grabbing what I could to add to our final treasure tally, from portals to shipwrecks and anything in between that I could get my hands on. I pretty much wanted it all. And then, finally, it happened. The map started to fill in, and I knew we were getting close. Finally, that elusive structure that we have been searching so long and hard for, the Woodland Mansion. Well, how nice. There's even a welcoming committee. Hello. I'm the only one that has a problem finding the front door on these things? Let me know in the comments. I mean, we traveled all this way. I'll break myself in if I have to, but I'd really prefer to find the front door. Oh, good grief, finally. Once I did actually manage to find the front entrance, I decided to play it safe and set my spawn because there is just no telling how things are going to go down once I get inside of there. Actually, thinking about it, I don't think I've ever tackled a Woodland Mansion on my own, at least not in Java. Oh, you were not the first face I was expecting to see. I carefully made my way through the corridors, grabbing any treasure I could find, and methodically removing any obstacles in my path. And it was going along fairly well until I made one fateful mistake. I don't know why I did it, but when I saw the ladders, I decided I just needed to break through to see what was above. And what was above was the last thing I wanted to see. They are the creatures that I refer to as the sword-wielding gnats of death. Suddenly I was in a fight for my life, and I was just trying to find a place to hide so I could eat and regain my strength when this happened. It was a cheap shot, if you ask me. I was battered and bruised, but my spirit remained unbroken. I had suffered my first real defeat, but I wasn't about to give up. It merely fueled my passion to finish what I set out to accomplish, to conquer this Woodland Mansion. To my dismay, there were no allays, but onward we go. I carved my way up to the second story where my nemesis lay in waiting, apparently unaware of his soon-to-be fate. I readied my aim and took my revenge. And my first totem. I figured, why stop there? So I took all the bookshelves as well. I mean, he won't be needing them. I was so amped up at this point, even beating him with my bow seemed to do the trick. I found more bookshelves, and by the time I was done, not a single one would remain. As I turned the corner, I realized a trap was being set. I had been spotted, though, and those sword-wielding gnats had me in their sights. But this time, I was ready for them, and I was determined to not let them get the best of me. I decided to try to beat them at their own game by ambushing them with a sneak attack. This time they met their match, and it seems I finally got the upper hand. I made my way through the rest of the mansion to clear it out, and by this point I pretty much had enough and I was done playing with these guys, and I was pretty much just ready to be done and go home. Before I could do that, however, I did happen to notice the room full of cobwebs and thought, my goodness, these guys are really slobs. Our time here at the mansion has now drawn to a close. Having been victorious, it was time to bid farewell to our fallen enemies and head back to home to drop off our spoils. But of course, by now, you know the drill. And between point A and point B, we will pick up everything we see in the middle along the way. And one of the things that we've seen in the middle along the way is our third Pillager Outpost. But for some reason, the recording died, but I suppose better the recording than us. As we continue our conquest, I can feel the weight of the next task ahead, the ancient city. I spent the next day gathering everything that I could think of that might help. A lot was at stake here, and I wanted to be as prepared as possible. I pray that it's enough. I grab my supplies and head out, knowing that the journey ahead will likely be a long one. I decide to focus my efforts out beyond the icy region where the stronghold resides. As I soared past the icy peaks, my eyes fixed on the horizon, it didn't take long before I spotted a mountain range off in the distance. And it was beautiful. My heart started to beat with anticipation. Is this mountain going to be hiding the ancient city that we're looking for? I glide down as far as I can go, and then I begin to dig. The harsh reality is you could spend hours digging and never find an ancient city, and that's what it was starting to feel like for me. I was happy to find some extra diamonds along the way, but it's not the treasure I was hoping to find. Doubt started to creep in as I had thoughts of turning back, when suddenly there were finally some signs of hope. It certainly didn't mean that we had reached our destination, but it meant there was a reason to press on. With a newfound determination, I didn't stop until I finally saw it. The sight so welcome and yet slightly terrifying. The ancient city was stretched out before me, full of treasures waiting to be found, and a most formidable foe I dare not wake. I dug out a little safety spot for myself and readied my supplies. I stored away anything I didn't need and didn't want to risk losing. This is one time where I knew patience and preparation would be my best weapons. Still on the edge of the city, I surveyed the obstacles that lay before me. With cautious steps, I began to make my way ever closer. Every step deliberate, every movement calculated. I held my breath as I faced my first real test. I was already on edge when a bat started flying around and triggering the sensors at random. It was testing my nerves, but I stayed focused and kept my eye on the prize. I successfully disabled the first shrieker, ensuring that there were no others lying and waiting for me. With the first one successfully down, that was a huge boost to my confidence. And the first treasure was secured. From there, everything continued to go smoothly as I crept stealthily from one set of loot to the next, disabling sensors and shriekers along the way. At this point, even the kamikaze bat didn't faze me. I felt as though I could do no wrong. In fact, it was going so smoothly that I started to get very relaxed. A little too relaxed. In fact, I got so relaxed that this happened. And although the warden did not emerge, it was enough to stop my heart for those brief seconds. I knew that I couldn't afford another mistake. I had to be on high alert, so I carefully crept up the stairs and right onto a pressure plate. I only remembered one earlier shrieker, so I figured everything was okay. I carried on, determined to not let a lapse in concentration define the outcome. More aware than ever before, I continued to carefully dismantle the shriekers and sensors while collecting more and more loot. And then, it happened. The minute it happened, I knew there was no turning back. My heart stopped as I looked on in horror. The warden appeared before my very eyes as it felt like the walls were closing in on me. I tried not to panic, but all I wanted to do was run away. The plan was to stay slow and steady and just try to get some distance in between us. The darkness was blinding and I could not get a clear perspective on where I should go. I tried desperately to tower up to get over the wall, but I was blocked in. I had literally trapped myself. Out of pure desperation, I tried to launch some snowballs to distract him, but to no avail. Trapped and with no other options, I knew my fate was sealed. Undaunted by this setback, I gathered my wits and a few supplies, and I went back to gather my belongings. The warden, thinking he had won, had retreated. But I wasn't finished. I collected everything, losing nothing in the process. I couldn't help but laugh to myself, realizing that the warden has no idea who he's dealing with. I wasn't leaving until I finished what I set out to do. I had a plan, and I would stop at nothing to see it through. Every last bit of treasure this city had to offer would be mine, and no one, not even the warden, would stand in my way. Knowing I had taken every last article of value, I left the ancient city triumphant and ready to head home before facing the next challenge. As I looked back, realizing the warden was now but a memory, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. However, I know that our journey is far from over. Our next obstacle is to take down the Wither, a powerful and dangerous creature that threatens to keep us from achieving our goal. But to face this foe, we need to journey into the Nether, a dark and treacherous realm that on its own holds many dangers. As I stepped into the portal, a knot formed in my stomach. The Nether is the last place I want to be. But we have to hunt down the Wither skeletons in order to collect their skulls. While fighting my way through the corridors of the fortress, I stumbled upon a chest that I hadn't found before. The loot was good, and we will add that to our tally. And we are finally on the board with our first skull. Despite my apprehension, I made my way through the fortress, taking everything that came my way. The fate of our mission to conquer the Overworld hung in the balance, and I couldn't let anything stop me, not even fear. I stayed the course until finally I had what we needed. I made my way back, trying to prepare myself for the upcoming battle. I couldn't help but feel a mix of fear and excitement. We are one step closer to the ultimate victory. With the looming threat of the Wither hanging over me, I knew that I had to take decisive action, and so I made the bold decision to bring the fight to my home turf down into the mines. I knew that this was a risky move. The Wither is a powerful and destructive creature, capable of causing massive damage if given the chance. Oh, come on, really? It's so embarrassing. But I also had faith in my own abilities and my familiarity with the terrain. I trusted that I could use the narrow tunnels and cramped spaces to my advantage, confounding the Wither with surprise attacks and clever maneuvering. As the Wither burst into existence, I aimed my bow to get the first hits in quickly. I then grabbed my trusty sword, charging forward, striking blow after blow against the Wither's twisting form. Despite its formidable strength and the explosive bursts of energy that it unleashed, I remained undaunted. And just as quickly as it began, it was over. And the treasure of the Nether Star is ours. The last piece standing between us and our final victory is one that I had nearly overlooked. Throughout our journey, I had celebrated every outpost because of the prospect of finding goat horns and allays, but somehow the act of defending a village during an epic raid battle escaped me. With the finish line in sight, I was burning with a determination like never before. Without a second thought, I took to the skies to return to the outpost. Feeling the wind on my face and excitement coursing through my veins, I could barely breathe. And then, just on the horizon, I spotted it. A village in need of a hero. I quickly landed to introduce myself to the locals and secure their town, making sure they were tucked in and out of harm's way. Who's the nitwit here? I added some security lighting throughout and then made a place of safety for myself. With preparations in place, it was time to poke the beast and get some bad omen. Almost immediately, I was able to spot their fearless leader, and I couldn't help think that perhaps a bit of fear would have done him some good. With the target down and the rest of the troops in a tizzy, it was time to head back to the village. As the frontline villagers sounded the bell, the raid troops suddenly appeared, great in number and advancing quickly upon the village. This epic and final battle had officially begun. I decided to take the high ground and snipe the waves as they rolled in. It was a risky move, but it proved to be a good strategy. Even though I was far outnumbered, I had the advantage. That advantage was that I had a purpose, to protect the villagers who were depending on me. And I was not alone. We all worked together to ensure that this village would not be destroyed. I used every bit of skill and cunning that I had to outsmart the enemy. I knew that those little gnats of death, known as Vex, were just around the corner. We had a history, but I've learned from my mistakes. I set my traps and I was ready for anything that they threw my way. The battle was long and hard, and it didn't come without its casualties. There were setbacks, but those setbacks would not result in defeat. I was fueled to victory in knowing that there were people counting on me, and I was counting on myself. I picked up the pieces undeterred and regrouped, more determined than ever before to end this battle once and for all. As the last wave rolled in, I knew that they would throw everything they had my way. I could sense their desperation, but I was ready. Piece by piece, I picked them apart. The Vex were unleashed and my trap was ready and waiting for them. One by one, I took them down, having learned from past mistakes. And then, the time finally came. The battle was down to the very last one, the token of our soon-to-be victory. But a valiant death was too good for him. I had him take a seat and wait until I was ready. I returned to my perch, storing my spoils before readying myself to take aim. And then, just like that, it was over. And now it's time that we head back home. Upon my return, I felt as though I could sense a feeling of admiration from the villagers. They knew great things had been accomplished, and they knew they had helped. And with these many victories today came many rewards, very many rewards, all earned through hard work and a spirit of perseverance. Never giving up even when things looked dark, having faith that by continuing to press on, victory would be won. And that, my friends, is the story of how I conquered the Overworld. How we conquered the Overworld, and it was a glorious adventure at that. Another adventure that you might enjoy is this one. Check it out.